this intervention from the Archbishop of Canterbury and York and these 23 bishops, whether or not you agree with their views, they are there to be sort of a moral compass to the country. It is a Christian country. They sit in the House of Lords. They have the capacity, potentially, to put a bit of a spanner in the works. How significant are their comments?
Well, I agree. I think it's literally their job description to have to express their views on these kind of matters. How significant it is, I don't think it's going to be stopping Priti Patel, who seems to be, dead set on this policy. This is very much part of her drive to impress on people that she's serious about tackling immigration. So I don't think it'll have much impact.
What's your particular objection to the policy? Is it the destination? Because I know your book focuses very much on Rwanda, and we of course know the tragedies of the genocide there and questions about its humanitarian record in current terms, or is it the policy itself?
I'm not a refugee expert. I mean, I think there are major question marks about offshoring refugees, and I can see that there's a need for a radical sort of examination of refugee conventions, which, the law, it just isn't working for a whole host of countries. Britain isn't the only person considering introducing these kind of policies. Denmark's about to do the same. Israel's tried it in the past. And as we know, Australia's also done it. But my shtick is as an a writer about Africa, is the choice of Rwanda. It's a very inappropriate choice. In fact, I can't really think of anywhere worse to choose.
How did this come about, Michaela? Tell us, I mean, obviously you have your concerns. Most of us are completely uneducated about Rwanda. What are your concerns in particular? Why is the regime gone wrong?
It's a country that's rebuilt itself amazingly since the genocide of 1994. Massive reconstruction, and it ticks a lot of development boxes, which is why a lot of Western governments, aid donors, are very keen on it. But it's also got a terrible human rights record. And if you read any of the reports by Human Rights Watch or Amnesty International or Freedom House, you'll see that arbitrary arrests, disappearances, extrajudicial killings, torture in prison, all of these are widespread and repeated. And British officials have expressed their concerns on that subject. Just last year they did in Geneva at a UN meeting. So these things are known to British officials, but suddenly we're sort of forgetting that because we're so desperate to
Michaela,
offload.
if they were monitored, if they were policed by international or British officials, would that in any way put your mind at ease?
I'm sure they will be policed at the beginning, when these refugees go out there. I just can't see how long-term it's going to work. It's a very overpopulated country. What are these refugees going to do? It's, they've got 130,000 refugees living in tented camps already in Rwanda. There's no...
Excuse me, why does Rwanda want these refugees? Is this purely a business transaction?
I think there's definitely an element of, Rwanda was about to see its budget cut, its aid budget cut, because Britain's cutting aid around the world. So it's going to be getting £120 million extra that it wasn't anticipated as part of this deal. I'm sure that's just a down payment. But I think it's more about kudos. President Paul Kagame likes to be the problem fixer in Africa. He sends peacekeepers around Africa. He likes to present himself to Western allies as, you've got some sort of tricky issue, I can step forward, I can solve your problems.
Am I right in thinking that he won the last election by some huge majority, like 96%, which just to any democratic nation suggests that perhaps it wasn't free and fair?
He regularly wins elections with over 90% of the vote. The last one was nearly 99% of the vote. So I think we know that the elections are rigged, His former aides have said as much.
That being said, it's not just the UK that thinks that Rwanda is a suitable place to send asylum seekers. The United Nations itself has an asylum centre there, which is housing people wanting to go to Canada and to Sweden, people fleeing from Libya. So it's not just the British government that have thought it was suitable, but also the United Nations.
Yeah, the UN used Rwanda. Rwanda stepped forward and offered its services when there was this crisis situation in Libya where people were being treated absolutely appallingly. And Rwanda did step forward. The UNHCR has been very grateful. It has said as much. But we're talking about a different kind of policy here, one that in theory could go on for years. And my concern is about all these young men who are fleeing repressive governments and will find themselves in a very repressive society, a very conformist society as well, a Christian society, a society where they don't speak the language.
Yeah.
Are they really going to stay? I don't think so.
Well, you make a very impassioned case there, Michaela. You obviously know what you're talking about and putting it out there. I just want to bring Michael Brown in here from a political perspective. And the problem, I mean, we hear firsthand from Michaela and her concerns. We have talked earlier in the programme, that is not really reflected. The audience we have gathered yesterday and today, they're sort of saying, well, it might be somewhat unfortunate, but actually until someone thinks of something else better, we'll go along with this.
Well, it's a suboptimal solution. I'm perfectly ready to concede that. But what do we do? This country has endured, I think you mentioned the figure of 10,000 illegal immigrants brought here by the most awful criminal gangs with no sign that that is going to stop. The EU simply does not want the problem. Everybody ends up on the coastline of northern France and Belgium.
I was looking that up, and according to the House of Commons Library, in 2020, Germany housed 62,500 asylum seekers, Spain 51,000, Greece 34,300. They were the top three. We didn't come anywhere close to that.
But they're not coming into those countries in the illegal way in which they're coming here.
But there is no legal way for asylum seekers to get into this country.
Isabel, the international law says that if you seek refugee status, you claim that status in the country in which you land. When you end up in France, France is not a dangerous country, as far as I know, and the EU is determined to shirk its responsibilities, France in particular. We cannot, if some solution is not found, at what point do the British public say to the elected government, and it is the elected government, by the way, we don't elect the Archbishop of Canterbury. If we did, we might not have the present one. We don't elect the Prince of Wales. If we did, we might not have the present one. We elect a government, and a government puts its policies in a manifesto, which it did in 2019 with an overwhelming majority endorsement by the people, and the government has a responsibility to the people to carry out its election promises.
Yeah, and I understand that, but as you yourself admitted, this is an imperfect plan. Do you think that will actually deliver that promise?
I'm prepared to concede that the jury is out on whether it will work, but if nothing else, what does the government do? And you mentioned the figure, Eamon, by the way, of 10,000. That's only 10,000 that we count that get off the inflatable boats. We do not know the thousands that get elsewhere on the South Coast. I think
if I'm reading Michaela right, and forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth here, you're saying, well, if we've got to do this, send them to Australia or send them to somewhere with a country that has a human rights notable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't sort of tend to comment on the refugee issue because I think it's a very thorny problem and I'm not an expert on it. But yeah, I wouldn't send them to Rwanda. You don't send them to a country that has immense security issues because it's in a very turbulent region and there's actually fighting on the border over Rwanda, which Rwanda is being accused of fomenting. So there's fierce fighting.
May I just ask one final question? A lot of people will be familiar with the movie Hotel Rwanda, which focuses on a specific story, but brings to life the horrors of that genocide. Am I right in thinking that the family that story is told, their relatives are actually in jail at the moment?
The Hotel Rwanda hero, Paul Rusesabagina, is in jail. He was renditioned. He was basically kidnapped from where he was living in Texas by the government, which wanted him in jail because it accuses him of all sorts of terrorist crimes. He's serving a 25-year sentence. There are, I think, 16 opposition activists in jail at the moment. There are loads of bloggers and citizens, journalists. It's not a great place to send people who are trying to find some form of freedom in their lives.
And as you say, you raised a very worrying point there, particularly the young men, of which most of these migrants are. What about the future? What's going to happen to them? What future would they have in that country?
Do they want to become peasant farmers? Because that's the way most Rwandans survive. And then there's an issue of is the land available? Because, as I said, it's the most overpopulated country in Africa.
Well, as you say, a hugely thorny subject, no obvious solution to it. Michaela Wrong and Michael Brown, thank you so much indeed.
But you know, Michael, the other thing is I think we've got a situation where we're very sympathetic to people who flee Ukraine because we know the story. We know what's happening to them. I just think these poor people that we're talking about, we just don't know what they have fled from.
Oh, absolutely. Look, humanity obviously always intrudes on any political issue, a problem. But the fact is, the British people are not going to cope with, in terms of the way they vote, if none of the political parties are able to address this issue. Then you get extremism rearing its head and getting elected.
Yeah.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.